Speaking moistly, keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Speaking Moistly. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Yeah, I figured we'd get right into it. Usually I do a little anecdotal thing, but I was just shoveling snow. It's been a crazy day. Have you gotten out to shovel your snow?
Oh yeah, scraping the windows, all that fun stuff. Deep snow here in Toronto.
Yeah. My cars just got plowed in, so because we had them out on the roadway to do our driveway, and then the plow came by, which is great. So
That's fun. Are you training the kids to?
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Soon.
We kicked them out to the backyard. And it's like, go play over there.
Gotcha. Cool.
So it's Valentine's Day, and politicians love capitalizing on any holiday. And
Yep.
shall I read to you Jagmeet's poem?
Oh, please do.
Liberals are red, conservatives are blue. Both have made things easier for the rich, but I'm in it for you. Heart.
Oh.
Right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine getting that as your Valentine? It would. I feel like when you do sing-song rhymes, you're maybe targeting a different, a different level than I'm used to in political discord, right? Like you're not aiming for the top shelf. Let's talk about the fine grain intricacies of this policy here. You're aiming for na maybe.
Yeah, and I tell this is hard to explain to normies and even other people. Like politics is a popularity contest. Thinking of it like high school is very apt.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good way to think about it.
Yeah.
And you might think, oh, this is such a stupid lame poem. And it's like, well, it's his supporters love it, and his haters are talking about it. So now we're all talking about Jagmeet Singh as we are right now. So it's like it's actually a pretty good move for him in every feasible metric. So yeah, this is like just a kind of smart, good, calculated risk, in my opinion, for Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah.
It is about scoring points. Oh well, technically he helps the rich too. It's like, people don't. At the end of the day, people don't actually care about what's actually going on.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's genius because people take away from it what they want, right? Who's rich? Not me. I'm not the rich guy that you're talking about. The rich are the people who are up on Mulberry Lane, right? The guys with 7 cars and the pool and the whatever house or whatever. But they're never talking about you, except that, they're talking about you, right? Like they're talking about the any rich people who have more money than the constituent they're currently talking to, right? And it's the I'm just interested in, and I'm interested in a lot of aspects of the Canadian political space, but I just think that it's very interesting. Jordan Peterson is popular. He can fill a stadium, and he talks about topics that are difficult to approach, right? And maybe have a high bar for understanding, right? But people are excited about that. They like being treated like adults. They like being in on the conversation, right? Being included in the discord. I think this is more important, and I think this is more important. And here's the finer points of this. And blah, blah, blah. They like to feel like their highest level is being represented. Jack Layton did that well. Jagmeet Singh is right? Like it's so. I just think I agree with you that it works on a certain level because Canadians are going with him there, right? But this isn't the party of Jack Layton.
I think you're right. I actually have multiple people who are on my PPC EDA board who are former NDPers, and they're just like, yeah, no, like I don't support the NDP anymore. So they kind of have turned a corner to be full blown champagne socialists.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Like that is a very interesting thing that the left does that unfortunately people don't really get, which is like, they say, oh yeah, we're going to tax the rich. And it's like, the thing about pitching socialism is like, they don't tell you about the super rich that's going to own everything at the end of the day. Like they kind of like leave that part out. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, the super rich and elite. Well, yeah, that's what is it from Animal Farm? We're more equal.
Yes, some animals are more equal
than everybody else.
SNC Lavalin? What do you mean SNC Lavalin?
Yeah, and it's so it is too bad because this is something that you have to explain to people, or like they have to get, and I would go as far as saying that the average NDP supporter doesn't get it. They don't get that.
Yeah, or doesn't want to.
Yeah, but that being said, I mean, it is kind of foolish to think like, oh well, you know, a lot of people don't get it.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not just NDP. Right? Yes, not just NDP supporters. Everybody, like there's a lot of conservatives who don't get what's going on too. Conservatives. Speaking of conservatives, not Andrew Scheer. Aaron O'Toole. I think Andrew Scheer did a better job than Aaron O'Toole is doing so far.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
Well, Aaron,
I honestly, I don't know. Aaron O'Toole has slightly better propaganda, but even his stuff is like.
Yeah, well, he's got a lot more to hit Trudeau on, but he's not. So the rhetoric here, he's taking a huge. This past weekend, and I talked about it in my show earlier today, but this past weekend, O'Toole has really taken a bath with the party loyal, and they don't like what's happening because the rhetoric is kind of hopeless, right? There's no. This is a tweet he sent yesterday. Happy Valentine's Day. There is no end in sight for lockdowns because of the failure to plan the vaccine rollout. You deserve certainty. You deserve competent leadership. Let's get to work. I think maybe roses are red, violets are blue would have done him better. Maybe.
Well, yeah, that's so funny that this is also done on Valentine's Day. Yeah. There is no end in sight for lockdowns unless we all get vaccinated. This is the thing that's been really bothering me about his tweets recently. It's like, you are for mandatory vaccinations for everyone, but You're not saying that, but you're strongly implying that.
Yep.
And
War Measures Act.
You know, since when does mandatory COVID vaccines for everyone part of your platform? Like, you know, it
certainly seems like it is.
Being honest, he's being honest with us, but it's like, you know, I can't even imagine how many people are just completely livid at this guy. Conservatives who are completely livid at this guy. Oh yeah.
See, I like honesty, but you can't walk into a room of like 10 healthy people and say 9 of you are going to die. Let's work together. like let's work together for the 2 of us who will be left. And implying that the person speaking is going to be the one left, right? Like, so it's very hopeless, right? So he's getting a lot of pushback, and he's saying it's time for certainty and competent leadership. But certainty and competent leadership wouldn't be saying we can't open anything until there's vaccines. Certainty and competent leadership would say Sweden, Florida, Georgia, South Dakota, North Dakota, all sorts of places open without mass deaths. A leader worth his salt would be saying, hey, there's all sorts of examples of no vaccines needed. Why are we removing Canadian civil liberties? I bet you if his messaging changed to that, he would be in a very different place in whatever internal polling has led to the change in tone. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, like, the creepy thing about all this is it really, and, you know, call me a friggin' tinfoil wearing hat person if you want, but it's like, it really feels like Aaron O'Toole is working with Trudeau at this point, because it's like Aaron O'Toole's whole thing is like, yeah, we're not getting vaccinated quick enough. And that's like the only thing that's important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing that's important, you guys, is we're not getting vaccinated quick enough. And it's like, since when is this like, what about our freedoms getting taken away? What about the civil liberties? It's super creepy that that's just kind of being passed off as like the priority all of a sudden of Canada.
Yeah,
they do that a lot. Trudeau does that a lot. You know, as speaking for all Canadians, this is what's on our mind. It's like, dude, you don't speak for me. Aaron O'Toole doesn't speak for me.
No,
it's crazy.
No. Well, his rhetoric, his messaging has changed as of this morning, 9:15 a.m. He says, it's time to roll up our sleeves and rebuild the economy. And it seems like a different person tweeting, because it's a French tweet and an English tweet all in one. They've got enough characters for that. So they're trying to turn the page on the hopelessness. Maybe. But in the UK, I talked about this on my show earlier today as well, but in the UK, they're looking at mandating vaccines or proof of vaccination to enable your access to clubs and movie theaters and concerts and other places where you would normally go. Israel is banning the same, or Israel is proposing to do the same. Israel to ban citizens from gyms, cafes, and shops if they refuse the vaccine. What do you think about this? Like, this is, I think they're making, I asked you before I told you what I thought. I'll tell you what I think first. I think they're making it, the way you live, to be illegal. And I think that it's unbelievably frightening that the leadership is advocating exactly for this, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, saying that this was going to happen a week ago makes you a conspiracy theorist or whatever. Like saying this, hey, they're going to do COVID passports. No, you're crazy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I would agree with this if this virus was a plague that was wiping out people left, right, and center, but it's not. And so it's like it seems very frustrating. It's all very frustrating how we haven't created a nanny state, but we've created this state of little wussies. Hey, oh my God, there's a slight possibility or chance that somebody might get sick at some point. Oh my God. And it's sad to watch. It's sad to watch. I think I think there's a lot of people who are totally not on board with any of this.
No,
and
I
think
agree.
that a lot of the times they show you the numbers. Oh, these are the numbers. Yeah, I don't know about that.
You said that you'd be on board if it was killing a bunch of people. I don't think I would be. I think that if it was killing a bunch of people, I think that you have to let it run. You have to let this thing run its course. This thing, whatever it is, you have to let our immune system. We can't live in a world where you don't see other people. Like, I don't think there's any good explanation. And I understand what you're saying. Like, maybe if they had a reasonable explanation that we needed to do this, maybe I could be on board for this, or yes, I'd be on board for this. No.
Well, I guess I should also say if it was like an actual old school vaccine.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's
like
not
if it was
even
an
a
old
vaccine.
school vaccine, and if it was like implemented the way an old school vaccine worked,
Mhm.
so
if it was
this
tested,
is a very parallel universe scenario, I would maybe be open to this.
Yeah,
but,
right.
The way it's being rolled out, like absolutely not.
Okay, fair enough. But you're right. I think this is quite a parallel universe. Like, we're in a parallel universe. Like, it used to be. So polio, and I think that if you look into the what's classified as polio and how they eradicated polio, I'm sure there's going to be some interesting comments regarding polio. But polio was basically reclassified in 1950 to make sure that the vaccine worked. Now, I think that it cleared up certain aspects of certain parts of polio, but there's long been the history of creative medicine. Let's just say maybe creative medicine. But at this point in time, so traditionally how a vaccine works is you get injected with some of the active agents, so some of the polio or some of the measles, red measles, whatever it is, right? Whatever the vaccine that you're getting immunity for is injected into you, and then your body has a reaction. And that reaction generates the antibodies that will then protect you further on, and you won't get wild measles or wild polio. But that's how traditional vaccine will work. How this gene therapy works is they go in, and the gene therapy is supposed to stimulate your cells to create proteins that behave like your immune system and attack this COVID thing, right? That's essentially what this is. Have I got it wrong?
It's something like that. It might even be that it creates like the attacher part of the virus, and then so it would be similar to a traditional vaccine, except this experimental gene therapy helps you create like what the virus part of the virus looks like, and then the antibodies work to I don't know, but
yeah. See, I was gonna say we're not doctors.
Experimental is a key word that needs to be used more often.
From everything
from
everything that I've read, this goes into you and instructs your genes to do this thing. Anyway, regardless, do this thing that creates the antibodies. Regardless, I don't think that there's any valid. I mean, we've got the Nuremberg Code that says very clearly we're not supposed to be, informed consent, right? So here is what we're expecting. Here's what might happen that might be terrible. You might grow a third arm. Like, have you seen Spider-Man? You know, like you might stick to walls, right? Like, right? You got to be informed, and then you can make your choice. But we're not being informed. We're being sold this vaccine and then coerced into taking it with threats of removing our freedoms. No gym for you, no cafes for you, no shops for you if you refuse the vaccine. Shops? Does that include grocery stores? Right? So it's like, this is a cudgel. They're using this to bring people into line. And what exactly the vaccine does.
And sorry to cut you off, but it didn't start here either, right? Because it started with 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
And now it's like, if you don't have your passport, you can't get groceries.
Right.
And it's it's people like us who from the beginning were like, hey guys, really don't like where this is going. Really don't like
slippery slope. Oh shit, we're at the bottom of the slope. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is another thing where it's we could probably even look at the past year and see what the different phases of compliance and kind of getting people to agree is going to be. How are we going to get people to agree to stay in their homes? Well, we need to add more fear porn and then, make people look crazy for disagreeing with masks and blah, blah, blah. And now it's the same thing where it's like, okay, we're going to introduce this idea of passports, add more fear porn,
Yep.
unperson or make the people look foolish who would ever disagree with this, and then on and on.
Yeah, and the people who
but
Sorry,
the kicker for me, which needs to be really emphasized here for this vaccine where you still have to wear a mask, you still have to get tested, you still might have the virus, you still have to socially distance. What does this vaccine change? What changes after you take it?
Nothing.
Tell me.
They know you're compliant. Nothing. There's nothing.
It's like, and this is the thing that I try to explain to the normies. It's like literally nothing changes. So why? It's such a huge important thing that we get this vaccine. Nothing changes. It's like hello. Is anything going on up there?
Yeah. I believe the WHO just changed the standards for testing as well. They lowered the cycle threshold, right? This happened in January, and it just happened. Everybody was like, oh, the cycle threshold. So the prediction is that the cases would drop. The cases are dropping. So what they're going to say is that the vaccine worked, right? That's what they're going to say. Except that the vaccine is taking a really long time to roll out. So there's no way that the vaccine could be the thing that's working. But regardless, New Ledger poll. Vast majority of Canadians blame Ottawa, not provincial governments, for delays in COVID-19 vaccine delivery. 69% of respondents believe Canada is behind on deliveries due to federal challenges. Only 14% blame the provinces. I blame Doug Ford fully for the complete loss of our freedoms. That's his fault. I blame him for how badly this has been managed. I blame him for the economic fallout. This isn't COVID that's done this to us. This is Doug Ford's bullshit and unbelievably inept response to this. This is not COVID. And I don't want a vaccine, but I want somebody to be held responsible for the bullshit that's happened with running this province.
The way in which, and I made a comedy video about this that's almost a year old, but the way in which they've sold this narrative to people that politicians are victims of the situation. They're just these poor victims of what's going on, and they're just having to deal with it, and they're working so hard. And it's like, who's to blame? The virus that definitely didn't come from China, and mentioning China in any way is not allowed. And people anti-maskers are the problem.
Yes,
that's
those whites,
people who say they're medically exempt. What monsters? They're the reason we're under lockdown. And it's whoa! How do you not see that the people who locked us down are to blame for locking us down? The way in which they've done this sleight of hand so effectively.
Well, it's as simple as this. Do you want to know?
Do
you want to know who gets medical exemptions? Do you want to know who gets medical exemptions? Who do you think?
People who ask for them?
White supremacists.
Oh, yeah.
Buddy.
Done.
Solved?
Done.
Terrorist white supremacists, buddy. That's the only people who get, who even try to walk into a store with an exemption. White supremacist people are the only ones who would dare, because they don't care about you.
They're selfish and they're racists, and they want to have a small business or something. It's
employ people.
Wow.
Isn't that slavery?
Terrifying. It's scary.
Where's Tatiana McGrath when you need her? So yeah, so I don't want to talk about vaccines or anything. All of these polls, like Laurie Goldstein, I think it's a distraction, and I think it's funny that the right wing journalists are falling for it, me included. I mean, there's no escaping it. Every other article is about vaccines, right? Here's where we are in the vaccine scorecard. Vaccines. I don't give a shit. I don't care. Every single time I see a vaccine story, I'm like, this is bullshit. Distraction from the loss of our civil liberties, and these people are being led down. If I was a journalist who had an editor that I was beholden to, I would rewrite every column to be this is not nearly as I'd give a little sentence. I'd be like, 69 people, blah, blah, or 69% of people, blah, 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 agree, whatever. But this pales in comparison to the amount of people who should be concerned about the loss of our civil liberties. I would be like, here you go, sir, and I'd lose my job. But that would be.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted something the other day that I think is here. One cannot reasonably comprehend the insanity of our world without considering the sheer magnitude of propaganda and its potential in the 21st century. It's now produced, distributed, and measured more effectively than ever before in history. So, with this whole vaccine thing, like it's slowly but surely, it's the slow propaganda drip because a lot of people that I've talked to normally say like, oh no, I'm not taking that vaccine. But like now that it's kind of, oh, we're not getting the vaccine. Like, oh man, based on what I'm hearing every single day after day about this, the new normal, or like how to get back to normal, is like the only option is the vaccine. Well, since it's been like, 21 days or 42 days of my psychology being influenced with this message, now I'm okay with, like,
Yep.
It's what's been so scary about the past year is, they say, oh, things don't change. And it's like, well, actually, if you really do have like an orchestrated campaign going, you can really get people to comply with stuff very quickly.
Oh yeah.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's been terrifying to see how little time it's taken.
Yeah. It's true. And I mean, the messages can be conflicting as well. I mean, here's a good example, right? Roman Baber says, happy for students returning to school today. This is 6 hours ago, so there's a lot of kids who aren't going back to school, but whatever. First, Ford Nation and Mr. Lisi locked kids at home to keep them safe. Now they cancel March break to keep them safe. Closing schools caused irreparable harm. What's not safe for kids is this government. I agree. Failures of this government are huge and massive. And the contradiction just continues, right? Like the message is contradictory. We need to keep the kids at home to be safe. Oh, we can't stop school. That will make the kids not safe. What?
Yeah. I mean, back in my day, didn't your parents always say, go get outside, go get some fresh air?
Yeah.
And now the government takes care of us and they're like, stay inside. You need to stay inside.
Stay inside.
Stay inside and play video games. It's like,
oh,
really, Doug Ford? Really, John Tory? You want my kid to stay inside? Well,
you were saying, I want to make a quick point. You were saying earlier that it's the most, looked at propaganda, measured, maybe. Measured, yeah. So you've always got a camera facing up on your phone, right? There's always a camera facing up, which I always think is interesting. But when you're reading your phone, and most people get their news on their phone, right? If you're reading, if the camera was recording your face, it would be able to time index your reaction to the news, right? So say some particularly big news story came across, and say you wanted to train an AI, like if you had an AI.
This is all hypothetical.
Hypothetically, right? Like if you were a big company and you owned an AI and you also owned the operating system that most people had, and that operating system had a camera that looked at most people's faces, and you had the capability of recording responses and reactions to news, would you use that to train your AI? Right? Like I would. Right? So I think that it's really interesting how quickly the cameras became always on, always looking, always pointing. Right? Always. And if you're not savvy, and I thought that it was interesting too, that Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook, no, the other guy, who's the Apple guy? Anyway, they had their cameras.
Tim Cook, I think. Yeah.
Is it Tim Cook? Okay, yeah, Tim Cook. Yeah, the guy after Steve Jobs. Yeah, him. Right. They had their cameras covered. Like they had tape on their cameras. And I thought, that's interesting to note. Like that's an interesting thing to note. So I think you're right. I think that there's a huge amount of data harvested through, and it might just be for hackers. If you're Mark Zuckerberg or you're Tim Cook or whatever, you don't want hackers breaking into your camera. And if they do break into your camera, you don't want them seeing anything. But maybe there's more to it than that. Who knows?
Well, I mean, even with the whole COVID app, I'm pretty sure it's like, oh yeah, get the yoga and we can just track you everywhere. And it's like, oh, okay, so you do have the technology to do that. If anyone was curious, like the technology exists to do that.
Yep.
And it's who's going to be the last person to find out if this technology exists?
Yeah. Well, right. And if you do find out it exists, then they'll tell you that you're racist and you're a white supremacist. Yep. And if you suggest that maybe that's a racist thing to say.
Well, yeah, Orange Man bad. When you were talking about the whole camera thing, I was just thinking, man, well, Orange Man bad. So I don't know what you're talking about.
You were thinking that Trump guy probably thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we'll end on this one. We were gonna talk about Nancy Pelosi and stuff, but I think we'll just end on this one. This tightens it up a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
All right. 5 people arrested and charged after several large gatherings in downtown Toronto. Now, I talked to you about this as well before in the green room. Talking about the kids who were charged in Quebec for their small gathering. They rented a chalet and they went to Quebec out of Ontario. So they've all been charged. And the owner of the chalet was charged. And they're cracking down on people. Yeah, they're cracking down on people, several large gatherings. How is this? How do you think this is happening? Are they tracking phones, or is this neighbors snitching on neighbors, a combination of both? I would suggest turning off your location settings, but I don't know.
I wish that people realized like that this is history we're living through, and how this kind of like rule change is significant, you know, because a lot of people will just say, oh, well, yeah, because of like the virus, guys. And it's like, how naive are you? Like, how naive are you to think that this isn't about something? I don't know. It's disturbing to see. It's disturbing to see because it's a lot of uppity, state-loving people like get off on this stuff. Oh yeah, like we crack down on the social gathering. We're saving lives. And it's like, well, you know, if you look into it, a lot of the people who are dying who are long-term care homes, and there's a lot of weird things going on there. So if you actually cared, you could look at that. But yeah, it feels like the destruction of our culture of freedom. And like, you know, wow, a bunch of teenagers went to a chalet in the winter and they got fined like, if that's not classical conditioning to like deter people from enjoying themselves, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And and it's like, sorry folks, but what do we have to look forward to right now? Can't even go to a chalet to enjoy ourselves. Like, holy smokes.
Yeah, it's unfortunate and frustrating. And we're in a situation where a large majority of the population either believe that it's necessary or are unwilling to speak out because they fear the retribution. And there is and will be retribution if they speak out, as we covered earlier. So, I mean, it's we're in a tightening knot situation, right? And people are pulling on it more and more. And the tighter the knot gets, the more right the people who are trapped in the knot believe they are. And I don't know what needs to happen. I don't know what needs to crack.
Yeah.
But
what I find disappointing, not disappointing, but like very strange, is that like there hasn't even been, I haven't seen many major exposés that have been like, you know, this super spreader event like led to this, that, or the other. Like it just seems like this weird theater of like, oh, the numbers spiked because of, and it's always like a hunch. Oh, well, they opened the schools back up and that's why the numbers went up.
There's never, well, they don't have the data. They can't back it up. And the funny thing is the reason I was talking about this on my show as well, the reason that they stopped way back in October, they shut everything down initially. And then the businesses said, what data are you using to shut us down? Like, we've got one, like they used the public data to prove that it wasn't them that was causing all this spread. And so Ford was like, you're right, opened everybody back up again. And then 2 weeks later came out with the color-coded, November 3rd came out with the color-coded thing, and boom, by Christmas, we're all in lockdown. And because there's only one way to go. Like there's only going to be increasing cases. Like, especially if, say you've got 6 or 7 sick people. Well, that's your base now because they're going to test more than once, right? Like they're going to be tested at different levels, right? So, all these tests, right? Big numbers. It's all fake. It's false. It's lies. But you're right. They use different tools through the media, through other places to push what they want to get compliance. And that's scary. Well,
we got to remain happy warriors. And we got to keep our heads on straight. That's for sure, as much as possible.
Darn right.
I mean, I have a friend who was we had a conversation last night where he talked about, you know, I brought up politics. He's like, honestly, don't. Like, I don't even want that, like, energy in my life. And I kind of actually really respect that because there is so much that's out of our control. So much that's out of our control. And it really does make sense to only kind of like look at what's in your bubble, in your immediate reality of what you can influence in a positive way. You know, sometimes going for a walk or reading the book is the best possible thing you can do for yourself, for example. And because like, you know, the opposite of avoiding the negative energy is something that I do, and that isn't the best always, which is like going through Twitter a little bit too much and kind of like getting involved with the story and being like, I can't believe this is happening. What? who is this person? This is crazy. And then kind of getting caught up in that energy, right?
I hear that. So you immerse yourself eyeball deep in it, right?
Well, sometimes too much, yeah.
Yeah, me too. All right, man. I think that we'll call it there. Where can people find you?
Find me on my YouTube channel, Greg Wycliffe. I just did a video last week that's called How's It Going? But You Answer Honestly. And then you can get me on Twitter as well, GWGDDUB.
Nice. And you can find me at CanadaPoly.com or CanadaReport.co. That's my scratch pad where I'm putting down my ideas and other stuff that I'm working on. And at Speaking Moistly, where you can see our back catalog. And I think I've actually got the site back to working with some functionality now. So that's good. Thanks for joining us. I'll have the Prime Minister play us out, and we'll see you again next week to look through the hellish post-apocalyptic landscape that Canada has become.
Speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.